Hey everyone, and welcome back to our 28-day Acts challenge, where we walk through the 28 chapters of Acts in 28 days. We're really glad that you're tuning in today as we jump into my favorite chapter in Acts, chapter 9. It's got this character that you might know, and an introduction to him that's kind of unsavory at first. But it's this guy that I really like, and maybe you like him too. It's this guy named Paul. But back in Acts chapter 9, his name isn't Paul. It's this guy named Saul. So way back in chapter 9 in Acts, we meet this guy named Saul. And Saul is really upset at this Christian movement. He's really upset as a faithful and very educated Jewish man. He is upset. He sees the foundation of his community crumbling in his eyes. And really, it was. This guy named Jesus comes and he flips everything upside down. And so the power in the community is also flipped upside down. Now, Saul, being an educated man, lived in the upper echelon of society in his Jewish community, which meant that his life really was flipped upside down. And so he's not so sure about this Christian movement. In fact, he thinks that it is no good. He thinks it's no good, and he wants away with the Christian people. In fact, he persecutes them. So here in chapter 9, we meet this guy named Saul, and he is out to get the Christian people, and he wants to put a stop to this Christian movement. He's on his way to this place called Damascus in search of persecuting Christians. And here in chapter 9, we hear this. Now, as he was going along and approaching Damascus, suddenly a light from heaven flashed around him. He fell to the ground and heard a voice saying to him, "Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me?" And Saul asked, "Who are you, Lord?" The reply came, "I am Jesus, who you are persecuting. But get up and enter the city, and you will be told what you are to do." So here's this guy persecuting the Christian people. The Christians are followers of this guy named Jesus. And here the risen Jesus appears to this guy who's persecuting the Christian people. Christ appears to Saul, and Saul is moved. Saul is moved by this flash of light and this appearance of Christ. And he does what Christ has said. He does what Christ has said, and he goes into Damascus, where he waits to be told what he is to do. And beyond that, in this moment where his eyes are open to Jesus, the risen Christ, his physical eyes are closed. He's blinded for 3 days. Well, this chapter has not only one, but 2 conversion stories. So God also appears in this same moment to this guy named Ananias. God says, "Ananias," who is this guy in Damascus, a follower of Jesus. And God says, "Ananias," and Ananias replies, "Here I am, Lord." And the Lord said to him, "Get up and go to the street called Straight, and to the house of Judas. Look for the man of Tarsus named Saul. At this moment he is praying, and he has seen a vision. A man named Ananias come in and lay his hands on him so that he might again regain his sight." But Ananias answered, because he knew of this man named Saul, "Lord, I have heard from many about this man, how much evil he has done to your saints in Jerusalem. And here he has authority from the chief priests to bind all who invoke your name." But the Lord said to him, "Go, for he is an instrument whom I have chosen to bring my name before Gentiles and kings and before the people of Israel. I myself will show him how much he must suffer for the sake of my name." So Ananias went. Both Ananias and Saul have these moments with God and with the risen Christ that move them into God's mission. They are encountering the risen Lord and God, and they are moved to meet God's mission. And thus they meet each other and they join together in ministry. Now, we don't hear anything else from Ananias for the rest of Scripture. We do know that he goes on to meet Saul, and he's with Saul in the conversion from Saul to Paul. And of course, perhaps you know this, Paul goes on to do some amazing ministry. We'll hear more about it throughout the book of Acts. And maybe you've even read some of the letters that Paul has written. Paul goes and helps start all of these churches in the Mediterranean. And we don't hear much from Ananias, but what we do know is that he had a key role in helping Paul do the work that God was calling him into. Both of these men, disciples of the Lord, go in to meet God's mission, and both are changed. Paul is met with this vision of Christ and is moved to be a follower, a disciple of the risen Lord, whom his people he once persecuted. Ananias is moved to be changed of thinking that this guy was someone he shouldn't be speaking to joining with him in ministry. So today I have a couple of questions as we ponder this big chapter 9. I have a couple questions for you as you think about your life of faith. What's a time in your life where your eyes have been opened to something new and your perspective was changed? And another question I'll leave you with today is, what are some areas in your life where your heart has been hardened by something or someone, and God might be calling you to change your perspective? Thanks for joining in with us as we talked about my favorite chapter in Acts, chapter 9. Love to see you tomorrow as we discuss chapter 10.